got to go back to Zoroastrian and Hindu prophecy. What did they say about what was going to happen in the times that we're now in? Because everything else, and this includes Hebrew prophecy, Christian prophecy, Islamic prophecy, you name it, they all trace back to these original seed teachings. When you read the original seed teachings, the Zoroastrians say that we're going to go into a period they call phrosokererti, which is where time changes. Something very intrinsic happens that changes the nature of our reality. And it's always been a mystery as to what exactly do they mean by that. Same thing with Egyptian prophecy. Same thing with ancient Greek prophecy that they inherited. It all keeps going back to, the Hindus said this too, the coming of a golden age. It's been widely misconstrued that this was going to lead to some sort of catastrophic disaster. What it really says, if you go back to the Hindu prophecy, for example, is that great saviors would come to the planet, and they didn't specify exactly what that was, but that it would turn things around in such a dramatic fashion that evil would be completely wiped out. And if you go back to the Zoroastrian prophecy, the time of phrosokererti I was speaking of, it says that evil actually withers away due to the concentrated and focused efforts of the just. And so what I believe is that here we are talking on this radio program, we're doing our own humble best to do what's right for the planet, and in some greater incomprehensible framework that we may not be able to fully understand, our ancient mothers and fathers squirreled away these prophecies for us today to let us know that things are going to be okay, that we can do this, and that what will happen once we uncork the bottle of the suppressed science, which has been deliberately held down, the benefits that we gain at that point are so much different than the society we have right now that it is literally equivalent to a dimensional shift. It is literally a coming golden age once the technologies are set free, and once people have such a massive awakening about the level of wrong that's been done. I believe that there will be a wave of compassion and a wave of sentience that people will have where they say, my God, Hitler was just a footnote. Everybody says, oh my God, the Nazis, the Nazis, the Nazis. Well, that's just like one little bitty line item in the contract that happened to squirt out by accident compared to what's really there. And I think once people realize that, and once they see what's been suppressed, they're not going to want to be living in ignorance anymore, and they're not going to want to perpetuate these lies and these hatreds that have been so prevalent. So I just wanted to squeeze that in because that's where my perspective is, that I'm very much optimistic, and I believe these prophecies are speaking directly about what you're saying. I think that this action that you're referring to is fulfilling prophecies that have been in writing for 6,000-7,000 years or more. And we're actually watching now how they're going to be fulfilled, and for me that's extremely exciting.
Well, the other part of it is that my understanding is that as we progress with this process, and I'm saying we collectively, Americans, everybody that lives here, my understanding is that all of these things that have been hidden for so long are going to be exposed very publicly. These things that have not been taught are going to be taught, and that sort of thing. So imagine now a nation without secrets. Imagine not having to worry about somebody doing something funny in the dark, in a closet where you can't see them. Pretty simple. And I've also done research in the areas you're talking about, and I found this to be extraordinarily interesting because the tablet that goes next to the law tablet of the Sumerians that they took from, they said, antiquity, also covers what you just said in terms of what is to come. And that was the part that I left that out simply. I don't deal with with a lot of the things that you do. That's not what I do. I have a tendency to be able to open doors, and I don't know how that works. I guess God's doing that, or something beyond what I can understand. And to be able to be a part, like I said, of setting a nation free again, I'm thinking about when I was around in the 1950s, and I'm thinking about how much fun we could have back then and not have to worry about being in serious trouble. Teenagers today get felony arrests for stuff we used to do all the time, and the police would get real upset with us, take us home, and Mom and Dad would definitely, I'd rather have a felony arrest than have what my mom and dad had really wanted to do to me. Quite that simple. The ideology of morality can be contained very simply. How would you want to be treated in a situation? Or, how do you act? Now, people are going to want to know what to do. The secret to it is locally. You go down to the local level, get to know your neighbors. You get to know what's going on in the small town that's close to you where you go buy groceries. You find out what the problems are. If there's something you can do to solve a problem, go ahead and take care of it. You'll be amazed how many people appreciate it. They may not know you did it. And you don't have to worry about it. You know you took care of something. And this can grow into anything. This is what's called a county project. This is listed on Oath Keepers. This is listed on freedomreigns.us, our website. And it gives you the information necessary to be able to be the person you really know you can be. And, think about not having to have guns anymore because you don't have to worry about it. Now, there might be a problem. I don't know, David, how far the research has gone in terms of what our relationship to the animals are going to be, but I've had at least one mountain lion out here that decided to take exception and thought I was lunch, and so I took a shot in his direction, and he decided that wasn't a good idea, or she, and everything's fine. I got his fed a few days later when it was out there, and I happened to walk out on the porch. So it knows who I am and knows that I'm not something necessarily that's on the menu anymore.
Wow.
And that's, other than that, I don't have any concerns. I love nature. I wouldn't live in the woods if I didn't. So, these are just, a few ideas. But think of something where you don't have these secrets. And David mentioned the sciences. I'm going to suggest that it goes even further than the sciences. It's going to require rebuilding a lot of the basic manufacturing so we can build these machines that treat people for diseases and take care of them. We're going to need farming. Whether the ascension, as a lot of people refer to it, or change in dimension, or whatever this great change that's supposed to be so great and beneficial does, I don't know. I have not been given that information. But the golden age is there. It's mentioned in the Sumerian tablets, and that's like 11,000 years ago. So if they knew about it back then, and the Maya picked it up and did a calendar that actually supersedes time, these guys are unwashed savages, and they knew about this. Okay, that tells me that somebody was a really, really good scientist, and out comes the knowledge, and away we go.
Yeah, in my book, I also explain how every level of cycle in the Mayan calendar is tethered to super cycles that underlie the planetary orbits. And that wasn't even discovered until the 1980s by an Australian scientist, and it wasn't even published until after the year 2000. And yet, how did they know?
Somebody had to tell them.
There you go. So another thing I just want to say here, because we're on 2 hours now and I want to honor people's time.
Go for it.
Is that you're probably used to speaking on shows that are essentially Americentric. They're speaking to the patriots and the people who are wanting to defend freedom in America.
Yes.
We haven't talked about, obviously, the fact that there, as you said, is a G20, and there are other countries in which there are plenty of cabal conspirators involved in this whole thing. Have you been given any information as to this operation outside the continental United States?
Yes, I got some interesting information. Let's see, I'd say over the last 2 weeks. One of the things that's been going on is that the small nations of the world are getting tired of the bad guys that were operating out of the United States coming in and snatching up everything of value and then disappearing and leaving them in the dirt. Consequently, they got together and decided that was not cool. The other thing that they have is financial backing that is ancient. Now, by that I mean the original Chinese rulers, people in Taiwan, people in Vietnam. They're all throughout the eastern areas. This deals with the extraordinary accounts called global settlement accounts and things of that nature, as well as a funding organization. Benjamin Fulford has mentioned this extremely. Now, one of the things that took place recently, and this was something that I was really following closely, I found a couple of places that note world financial changes. One of those changes is that the unallied nations finally formulated an agreement. And the agreement was that they would have their own financial system. And that basically started last Thursday in terms of being operational. They actually turned it on for the first time to see that everything worked. Friday they tested it. Saturday they tested it for real in terms of transfer of small amounts of money back and forth so nobody noticed. And Sunday they gave the thing a rest, put it on standby, and they turned it on Monday morning. And I thought this was really neat, and didn't say anything to anybody. So here you have, and there's about 200 nations, give or take, out there. As I understand it, the non-allied nations that are participating in this, they number like 130 or 40, something along in there.
Right.
But they have stepped outside of the financial control of the G5, G20. They are outside of that and offer an immunity to the capability of these bad guys to get a hold of any finance. This is the reason that the Eurozone's having such troubles. This is the reason that the United States is looking real iffy, and it goes on from there. As this plan...
Well, the U.S. dollar is the global reserve currency as per the Bretton Woods Agreement, and the U.S. dollar is a Federal Reserve note. Well,
there's going to be a change, from what I understand, from what we have now, which is called a debt instrument, to an equity instrument. In other words, there's been enough dollars printed lately to probably sink something. I don't know the volume of the money that's been printed, but I do know that as a world reserve currency, there's a large load of dollars out there.
Right.
The number of dollars in relation to this new currency is such that a revaluation or refunding of or exchange of that number of dollars for this agreed to currency supposedly puts us in a position of a basic 1-to-1 type of ratio of exchange for the little guy. Good. It does not include the big guys, from what I understand. I heard today that J.P. Morgan, Citi, and Bank of America were just about to collapse. Now, I don't know how true that is. We'll find out in the next few days.
Well, I put up something on my website right literally before I called you, and then as soon as I'm done with this interview, we're going to process it and get it up in that article.
Okay.
Regarding the public admission by J.P. Morgan that they are divorcing the Vatican, saying that the Vatican Bank was using J.P. Morgan bank accounts to pass funds through as sort of like just a very temporary holding facility. The funds didn't stay in J.P. Morgan, they just were shooting through it.
Yeah.
And they have completely closed that door, and it will be fully closed as of March 30th, 2012, and they only made the announcement on March 19th, 2012. That's a very, very interesting thing when you understand that these are two warring factions that used to be all working together.
Well, you're gonna have that kind of separation now. I'm not going to say that J.P. Morgan Chase is as innocent as they'd like to make themselves out to be.
Sure.
then you want to take it a step further. I'm going to suggest that it may be a reversal of fortune in terms of you do got the Rothschilds and Rockefellers as two basic principles. If you can add minor people that call a lot of the shots, such as Bush and et cetera. The thing that I'm seeing is that you have a separation between the United States and the European Union simply for the idea of preservation. Now, I was told that from a couple of different people that I've listened to that know what's going on, that the European Union is very close to collapse in terms of the euro. As the euro goes, so goes the dollar in terms of our economy. Now, the other part of this is that you got about a 2-week span before it starts hitting here. The other part of what our plan entails is finance. There are old funds held by patriotic entities here in this country who have enough money or valued assets, however you want to look at that, to pay our national debt some 4 times over. Now, that would be sufficient funding to take care of pretty much anybody's needs for quite some time. Now, this is not one of the collateral accounts. This is private accounting.
Wow.
That's a big difference than what a lot of people have been talking about, to include Benjamin Fulford. And I respect that man, highly. Okay, there's also been a couple of splits that are coming up in some of these secret organizations that are extraordinarily large and directly financial. And you're dealing with extraordinary amounts of money or valuation again. So you're going to have a bunch of things running around loose that should take care of things for, you want a golden age? Think about not having to use gas anymore, not having to pay taxes. Think about not having to worry about having food to eat. They do have, and I can tell you this from personal experience, there's a sci-fi series called Star Trek. And Gene Roddenberry was connected to some people who were basically sort of foretelling future events. Some of the things that you saw in there, to include transporters, which are referred to today as Stargates, this stuff's real. It's been being used for years. The idea of a food replicator has been around for a long time, but they've also been in use for a long time. So there's a lot of this. You're talking about extraordinary, major, and fantastic changes. You want a golden age? How about if somebody is hungry or you're thirsty, you go punch, it shows you a picture and it says drink, and you punch that and it says, what flavor do you like? Bingo, you got something to drink. Or if you want a steak, it makes it out of matter. You don't have to slice up cows anymore. So.
Yeah, I mean, you just mentioned something that I have heard and I have never gone public with. I refer to that technology as a materializer. I think it's probably a better sounding word. The classified term I heard is called a constructor.
Yeah.
And I've heard that those are very real, and it also works with your mind, so it's not like you speak the command.
Yeah.
It's that you literally visualize what you want to eat, and it will then scan and do the best possible job that it can. And this includes the fact that the food cleans your mouth as you eat it, and it actually turns into pure nutrition as you digest it.
Well, now you want to take this a step further. There was something else in that 25th century, 2500 AD sci-fi series, and that was that there is an economy running. Everybody's running around doing stuff. People are getting food and et cetera. They got clothes, place to live. And you might note one thing, and this is something that wasn't taken into consideration in terms of getting into details, but it was a moneyless society.
That's right.
Now, a lot of
somebody's in 10 forward and they want a drink, they're not plunking down coins to get it.
Exactly. And that extraordinary change, as I understand, is down the road after we complete a whole bunch of this stuff. But the basis for this is that the United States has been looked at as the bastion of freedom. And the crux of that relies upon our founding documents, the original intent of how things were structured, and the idea that the people, not somebody else, is in charge. Like I said, the military will install certain people that they have in mind that they know can do certain jobs for a temporary period of time and under limited powers.
So this means that the bills will be paid, the lights will stay on, and there will be continuity of the goods and services that people need for their basic livelihood.
As much as possible. There's going to be some interruptions. It's just a given. That's right. Going to happen. But it shouldn't be anything extraordinary. It's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be martial law. And, the whole thing is not going to go in the toilet.
Just to briefly loop back to my previous question, since we have a huge international audience, we have a massive audience in Australia, a massive audience in Europe. Do you personally, because I have my own intuition and intel on this, but do you personally have knowledge of there being a coordination in which the mass arrests in the United States will correlate with similar police actions in other countries as well?
That can happen, but it's not absolutely necessary. And the reason for that is that when you close the borders, you don't lose anybody that way. And if you take down portions of it at differing times, it's not going to make that much difference. Now, it would be nice and probably to some extent simpler to do it all at once, but you have to realize the extraordinary amount of tactical problems that you come across, the manpower involved, and whether or not, if you look at this, we've got a pretty massive job here, okay? Maybe somebody else might, in another country, need some assistance from us in order to accomplish the same goal. Or we may need assistance from people outside. It could be Interpol, it could be anybody. Who knows?
Right, Drake, and I also want to make it clear that the media, most of the world's media that is propaganda-based, is all based from American corporations, which are now syndicated throughout television networks all over the planet. And so, therefore, when you break the back of the Leviathan in this country, we're already seeing right now much more truth being told in the British press and in the news media of many other countries, and I would bet dollars to donuts that once this mass uprising occurs in the U.S., the people are going to realize the lies that have been told, and those in other countries who have been part of the problem, who probably will be named when this happens, are going to have to scoot very quickly and find themselves a very, very distant hiding place, because they're not going to be able to operate publicly, they're not going to be able to stay in their homes, because people are going to be really pissed when they find out what's been done to them.
That's part of it, but what you have to remember is that there's two ways that these people operate. One is covert, or under the covers, out of sight, that sort of thing, and one is out in the open. The European portion of this has been more out in the open. I don't know if everybody's noticed or not, but there's a large load of resignations, retirements, and arrests. And I thought it was interesting to find out from one source that supposedly the people here are running for cover too. The only problem is I hadn't heard anything about it. So I did a little investigation of my own and asked a couple of people I know personally, and lo and behold, what's happening is that they're not resigning and they're not surrendering. What they're doing is they are taking permanent foreign vacations. They're just simply walking out, collecting the family with a bag full of money, and going. Now, the problem with that is that the agreements that, as I understand, that are in place is that we are allowed to go get them wherever they go. And shame on anybody that's in the way. Now, I do not know of a country on the planet who could withstand the full force of the United States military, especially when you got the whole civilian population screaming for blood. So, yeah, there's going to be, I would imagine there's going to be hangings. You're going to have people jumping out of windows here and there. You probably have some gunfights. I do not want to see the riotous lynch mob attitude from anybody.
Neither do I.
The idea of tearing up your neighborhood because somebody told you that you were black is ludicrous and stupid. You got people in the neighborhood that lived there for years. They make the living out of that store, and you're going to screw it up for them? That's real intelligent. I wonder what you're going to do with the people that normally would work there. I mean, you're screwing the whole thing up. So the idea is to keep cool, calm, and collected because everything will be sorted out over a period of time. And I do mean everything. The finance, the idea of the police state is not going to exist as it does now. Common law doesn't allow for that. This is going to be the new basis. This is going to be the new responsibility ideology. Now, if you're not going to be responsible, somebody's liable to snatch you up and confine you or something, or put you to work someplace, possibly doing something or being someplace you don't want to be or doing something you don't like. Cleaning outhouses ain't cool. So, it's going to be reoriented to the old-fashioned basis in the 50s. Some things you didn't do because you knew mom and dad would kill you if you did it. And you knew that it wasn't right anyway. So you didn't do it. But you could go out and scream, holler, jump, run, roll in the grass, ride your bike at 5,000 miles an hour, whatever you wanted to do, and you didn't get in trouble for it. Okay? The kids today don't get to do that because of the load of information, and it's mostly not correct, that's being put out by the education system, that they got to learn something that doesn't fit with them. It disagrees with the idea of memorizing certain things because it's false. Lies do not fit well within the brain, period. And these people have changed the history books and a whole bunch of other stuff and lied to you terribly, and this is why the stuff don't go in your head well. Your brain is made by God, not by man. God knows the difference between right and wrong, and consequently, so do you. It's a little thing, a little voice, it's conscience tells you what's, do this, don't do that. Okay, real simply, the lies don't fit. That's why they're so hard to cram in your head. And
thankfully, the Founding Fathers, I learned this from my own legal research, put provisions in the United States Constitution that stipulate that conscience supersedes the written law. In other words, if conscience is very clear about something, then what's written cannot go against that. And that's in the Constitution. It's not something most people talk about, but it's definitely in there.
Exactly. But the premise of what I'm saying is the reason that the education is so difficult, the reason it's so hard to learn stuff, is simply because it ain't right.
Yes.
It's like eating something that's going to upset your stomach. Now, you get a steady diet of that, and you're going to have some problems. And this is basically what the difference between real education and what they're giving out now, that's the difference between it. This is why everybody's having such a problem. You don't need to do all of what's being done in terms of information overload in order to accomplish the goals that we have set before us. You're going to have to be smarter than you think you are, and that comes with the territory. But you can, and I have found this to be true, anybody who really decides they're going to do it, there's not too much that a person can't do. So, the education system's changing, the tax system's changing, the money system changing, the government's going to flip itself on its head. These are not little simple changes. And everybody needs to pay attention to that fact and realize that it's serious, and it's already on its way, and there's nothing nobody can do to stop it. The United States can't pay its debt. Therefore, the currency is going in the toilet, and is going to be replaced with something of equitable value rather than a debt instrument, which is what you have now in the way of money. That's a given. You have to do that. there's going to be barter and trade. There's a lot of things that are going to change. Go ahead. I'm sorry, David.
Well, what about national sovereignty? One of the other things everybody's so paranoid about is, New World Order. They want to take away my country and just merge us all into some gigantic octopus.
No, that was what the bad guys had in mind for us. That's what the FEMA camps were built for. They're going to reduce the population and all this other happy stuff. What's going to happen is that, yes, we're going to become world conscious, meaning that you're going to be aware of the Chinese, Japanese, whomever you're dealing with, the Russians, whoever. They will also have to be conscious of us. There will be much more friendly compliance in terms of trying to accomplish things than has ever happened before for one simple fact. Sovereignty, yes, or no. Now, nobody. War is good for absolutely nothing, just like the song says. The idea of war has been stepped on. Now, people don't believe in ETs, but I'm going to tell you something. There's a thing called law of averages. Any gambler knows that trying to pull in a 5-card draw game, a royal flush, is extraordinarily difficult. You cannot have more than, on average, 10 out of 100 guns that won't fire at the same time. And yet, recently, there's been whole armies and groups of troops that have had all misfires. You put a battalion online, you aim at the enemy and pull the trigger and it goes clink. That's not possible, I'm sorry. Somebody screwed with something.
Right.
I don't know what it was, don't care. I'm just glad that it worked. It's sort of like The Day the Earth Stood Still. That movie is excellent. All he did was turn electricity off for about 10 minutes, and it screwed everybody's mind up.
Yeah.
And these are the kind of things of proof that are going to be readily available in very near future. This is not very far down the road. The thing that's going on now is tactical positioning. They're getting ready to do this, and I'm hoping that it happens sooner than later. I wish it was last week, but I'm not in charge, so, I don't really know. But I listen to some people that do, deal with these things. That's how come I know what I know.
Yeah, there are windows that already came and went for when they were considering possibly doing this, but what I've heard is that they're not giving out specific dates now because they don't want something else to come along that changes the window and then have everybody get disappointed.
Well, not only that, but the bad guys are liable to put a roadblock in, or
of course,
roll a landmine up under your truck or something while you're driving down the road, and that's not fun either.
But they're really pushing the envelope too. I mean, they're trying to get away with as much as they can because they know the window is very narrow of how much time they've got. So they're passing executive orders and doing all this crazy stuff in this last gasp, which is ironic because the more of this kind of stuff they do, the faster they bring about their own demise. Exactly.
Because what they're doing is they're spending their ammunition. It's kind of like when you're running, you want to make sure you don't run out of bullets when you got bad guys coming at you. And
right.
When they're shooting at you, you need to be able to shoot back. If you don't, you get a problem. So the ammunition, you have to look at the ammunition they're shooting. Now, in some cases, they have done a lot of different things, but lately, the ammunition has been simply press or hollow or without meaning.
Right.
So that's a big difference. That's like shooting a blank.
Yeah, it's a psyop.
Yeah.
It doesn't have any tactical advantage other than the psychological advantage.
Yeah, they want to psych everybody out and make people real nervous and scared and this and that. And
if we go back in military history and we look at how Hitler was defeated, basically his communications had been secretly tapped. He didn't realize this. Winston Churchill had to make the terrible decision of allowing his own family to be bombed in London, knowing that if he gave it away, they wouldn't be able to win the war. And what happened was they tweaked Hitler's ego to such an extent that they got him to march on Stalingrad, Russia, in the winter, and then the slash and burn policy was used so that his soldiers couldn't find any homes to plunder, any people to rob, or any food to get.
Exactly.
And they perished in the winter.
Exactly.
And it wiped out his army. And so the lesson of history is that when people get desperate, when they get angry, they get really stupid, and ultimately it was Hitler's narcissism and his ego and his pride and his vanity that brought him down. It was him starting to get stupid in the heat of battle and making dumb moves that he wasn't thinking like a chess player, and he wasn't thinking 5 moves ahead. And I think that there is such a lack of central command right now, they can't think far enough ahead, and they're making these knee-jerk decisions out of fear, and that's what's bringing them down. They're getting stupid, they're getting sloppy, and you're seeing more and more evidence of this right out in the open on the headlines of the news.
Exactly. Now, I understand one of the key points that they're going to take is control of all the news media. So you're going to have a full channel, all of the news media, to include all the other channels, are going to carry the information for a time. They'll return back to movie channels and things of that nature afterwards. But all of your news channels then will be free to actually report some news. Now, I'm going to give you guys an example real quick. Look at the news during the day. And I'm going to tell you, if you look at it closely, you'll find that there isn't any news. They're not reporting squat. The reason is they don't want you to know what's going on for real. And that's the difference between them and us and the reality of this program as it's been laid out. The plan is very simple, and it's being followed to the letter.
Well, I remember back when I was working on my music album, Wander Awakening, I was staying at my friend Larry Sire's house in Austin, Texas. For about 9 months, we were working on this album. It's 50 songs, and so it took a long time. And I'm not going to say which one it was, but there was this one channel when he was flipping through the channels on TV, and we called it the Kaylee channel. Because every single time we went to this channel, day or night, they were talking about this very cute missing little girl, presumed dead. And how can that generate enough news to feed an entire channel day in and day out? But that's what was happening. All the talking heads on this channel, all they talked about, Kaylee, 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 all day long. It was crazy.
Well, if you want to update that, I would suggest look at the deal with the Supreme Court right now in terms of the only thing you're hearing about is Obamacare.
Right.
What happened to Syria? What's happening in the Middle East?
Right.
What is going on with the other countries such as China and Russia, who are major players on the world stage? Nothing's going on in any of these places according to what you hear on the news. It's only us. And
right.
Even your usual news from Great Britain is not coming through like it used to. It's beginning to become bland, and pointless, and actually newsless. Okay, like I said, they've lost the capability to influence people the way they'd like, and through various means, they're getting ready to take the last or final plunge. And from what I've heard, the tactics are getting ready to happen. So everybody can look for a nice, bright, sunny day right down the road.
Well, it's very exciting, and I want to thank you for taking the time out of your valuable schedule to speak with us today. And please let us know when this window starts to come so that we can do the viral maneuvers necessary. I want to be clear that everyone listening to this, I would imagine just about everyone listening to this is going to want to help in some way. And I would say that probably, if you're not a soldier or retired military, the majority of the people listening, what really is going to help the most is you simply letting other people know that this is real. This is not internet conspiracy theory. This is not Chicken Little, sky is falling speculation. This is a plan that, as you said, Drake, was already a 5-inch thick document in 1979. They've been building up to this for a long time. Action is going to be taken. It's too late to be reversed. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. It will be swift. It will be dramatic. It will be probably the most significant moment in any recorded modern human history. And there is going to be a massive worldwide panic attack in the early stages of it. It's inevitable. People are going to freak out because they've had their heads in the sand. They didn't want to see that there was something bad going on. And it's really important that everybody who is hearing this, you're the ones who now have the charge. You know about this in advance. You have the insider knowledge of what's coming. And it's really important to help get other people prepared so that they know when this occurs that it's not all of their doom and gloom fears coming true. It's not a coup. It's not martial law. It's not New World Order. And that these people who are doing this are valiantly defending our freedom, and they can be trusted. And at the very, very least, even if you don't trust it, stand by and just watch and see what happens. Because I'll tell you something. If we uncork the bottle of secrecy and all these people that have been fed a lie a day, or 10 lies a day, or 100 lies a day from every corner, from every magazine, from every television network, when they find out that all that stuff isn't true, how in the world can you ever put the genie back in the bottle? This is something I think all the fearmongers fail to realize. Once you break this secrecy, once you break the back of the Leviathan, you can't put the genie back in the bottle. Corruption will never be able to fester again because the truth is a weapon that subdues this cabal. They don't want the truth to come out, period, and therefore when the truth does start coming out, that's your sign that they are no longer running the show and that positive changes are happening. Would you agree with that, Ray?
Absolutely. And something to remember is don't freak out no matter what's going on. Just sitting there and, kind of watch out the window and see what's happening. You probably won't notice any difference between one day and another, other than that the news will probably go ballistic.
Right. Think 9/11, but on a bigger scale, because the news is there to make people freak out. And, when 9/11 happened to me, I'd already been accustomed to having very intense things happen in my life. I was perfectly calm. I drove home, and I proceeded to write articles the whole rest of the night about how I had been publishing dreams that had predicted all this stuff well in advance in very specific terms, including airplanes, economic collapse, all kinds of specific details I already had on my website. And the media tries to make you think that you're in danger, that you're in fear, that there's a threat going on. But I would also imagine that when they realize what's going on and that these things that have been talked about in advance, such as what you and I are doing, are coming to pass, nobody wants to be that guy on the Nuremberg trials who said, I was just following orders. And that includes the media.
Well, a lot of the media is going to be replaced, just that simple.
Yeah.
And they're a little too far gone to keep them, so, sorry about that, but you're going to be adjudicated. Now, one of the things I want to say here is that you got a lot of bad guys. Some of them worse than others. Some have done things that human beings shouldn't do at all, okay? Depending upon the level of what they did is the way I would suggest they be judged. Now, it's going to be up to us to figure out exactly how nasty we want to get with these guys. However, you might want to consider keeping a few of them around simply so that they can show you what they did, how they did it, so that we can make sure it don't happen or can't happen again, and we can find that little closet that they had specially built into the house where the record boxes are at. There's a lot of advantages to treating people a certain way.
Well, and I also want to make it clear that Hitler's actions against the Jews were felt justified by the people because the Jews were blamed for everything that's wrong.
Exactly.
And in a lot of cases, what you're dealing with when you talk about Illuminati, in truth, is a vast, multinational, secret combination of a huge number of different corporate entities, military entities, governmental entities, everything.
Mm-hmm.
And there are many, many levels of that hierarchy of people who would be killed if they tried to get out. And in my view, probably the greatest travesty of all in this whole situation is that all these folks on the internet who are into the conspiracy stuff, they're out there thinking that everybody who can have this label put on them is equally culpable and equally evil, when in fact, as a whistleblower named Savali has said from the Illuminati perspective, the majority of these people don't want to be in it. They hate what's going on. They hate doing their jobs. And they would do anything to get out, but they know they would be killed and tortured, and everyone they love killed and tortured if they did. And so you better believe that there's going to be a lot of people who are brave patriots who deserve to be given amnesty and given a chance to testify to what happened in exchange for some degree of clemency so that they can help fish out who the real problems are and be given a chance to reform. I think that it's a fatal mistake for us to embrace a genocidal mindset and slap the word Illuminati on people and think that means they should be put to death, just like the Germans slapped the word Jews on somebody and put them to death.
Well, I'm going to give a real simple illustration that everybody should think about. I'm sure everybody's heard about the IRS. Well,
yep.
I'm sure that everybody has heard about the massive record-keeping process that goes on.
Sure.
Now, somebody that sets the precedent of, let's go take this guy's house just because we can, that turkey needs to be dealt with rather harshly. Now, the guy that works for him, the clerk, the person that files, the person that answers the phone, might know how things work well enough that we can more quickly unwind the mess that's been made and at the same time exonerate what their actions were. I mean, you know, you got to eat, so you got to have a job, and the only job I can get is the one at the IRS, even though I got a degree, but at least I can eat and I can feed my family. So I'm going to be a clerk. And what I'm going to do is I'll eventually end up being senior file clerk. All he's doing is putting papers in a drawer. I can't say that he's the evil mother that came out and foreclosed on houses or put tax liens up somebody's whatever. That was the boss. Those are the people that we're after. A lot of them are going to turn too, because they do not want to bear the brunt of being strung up in a tree. Just that simple. And in Germany, there was a whole bunch of people got strung up and left in the public parks, strung up in trees. I don't advocate that. I don't advocate I don't like violence. Never have. But I'm not beyond pulling the trigger on somebody if I need to protect me or my wife. I don't necessarily feel that it's a good idea to go into, say, J.P. Morgan Chase and go after them with loaded guns, because some idiot is liable to pull the trigger even by accident and do something and cause something they don't want to happen. And you have to take the responsibility in the position that, well, we already got them. We can decide later if they need to be shot or hung or whatever happens to them. Some of them, I'm gonna say right now, even though I don't advocate violence, there's some of them need to be chopped up in little pieces before they're executed. Well, I'm serious. I know that you have the capability of looking in somebody's eyes and getting a reasonable feel for the condition of that person's soul or spirit. And I have looked into some of the eyes of some people, and it's blank, and it's dark, and they look back at you like you're on the menu.
Right.
And I personally am not going to put up with that, period. That person is either going to be executed or put away permanently by itself, whether it's male or female, doesn't make me any difference, and kept that way until they pass away or are executed for crimes or whatever.
Well, I think that if you go back to that Sumerian common law you were referring to earlier, it's essentially something that I would argue is actually a universal principle, and that is that we don't harm other people. And if someone has done massive, massive harm to others, and that includes torturing people, killing people in large numbers, and doing it with a sadistic glee and people who are innocent, that we as a society do have the right to issue a death penalty. Now, some people are going to disagree with me on that and say the death penalty should never, ever, ever be done. But it's going to be difficult to argue otherwise with the number of people who are going to be upset and who are going to want to see some degree of justice occur. But all that being said, I think it's really important that we not be quick to do this and that we don't start making assumptions. I think that people have a right to a trial by jury, and I think that doing a bunch shooting at the beginning is a terrible mistake, and it makes us no better than the people that we're attempting to supersede. And I think that these people do have a right to defend themselves, just as our law stipulates.
I'm inclined to agree with that, but like I said, I don't advocate torture, and I don't like violence, but some people do need to be executed, and
right.
That's just how it is.
But if you look at, for example, the South African Truth and Reconciliation Committee, some of that did happen.
Yeah.
But it happened in context of public hearings.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I think we pretty much covered it. I don't know of anything to add to this.
I feel we've done a terrific job. About the only other thing I would add is just to second what you said about this bizarre situation that's happening with guns jamming on the battlefield. It's a pretty big issue. It's the main subject of the article I'm writing right now. There's been over 40 of these types of events that I'm aware of. I'm going to be detailing all of them in my article called Divine Intervention, which is on divinecosmos.com. These are crazy events, and from what I've heard, and apparently now you're hearing the same thing, everybody in the Pentagon, good guys and bad guys, is aware that this is being done and that these actions are not singling out any one nation. They're actually going against anybody committing an act of aggression. You're absolutely right about the day the Earth stood still is an excellent point of comparison for that. And a teaching that seems to have been sort of like a time capsule of truth that we wouldn't realize exactly how prophetic it was until these moments actually started to happen for real. That movie was a documentary. It was not fiction. And, there's a series of very compelling pieces of evidence that are coming out, one of which is the Iran drone scandal, in which our best RQ-170 Sentinel drone is flying over Iran, and somehow they gained control of it and landed it intact, and they published the pictures of it on the internet, and everybody can see that. Now the thing is, what people may not realize is that the RQ-170 Sentinel drone uses a communication system that is quintuple encrypted and was believed completely impossible to be hacked. It is the most advanced communication system that any of the classified assets that we have, including all the stuff coming out of Area 51, Lockheed Skunk Works, nothing that we have in the Black Ops community has a communication system and a guidance system more advanced than what was on the RQ-170. Therefore, the fact that that could be overtaken and grounded means that nothing in our possession, nothing in our arsenal is free from potentially being overridden. And this is one of a variety of things you can look at in the mainstream media right now. You can see when this came out. And in fact, the U.S. government, in an astonishing act of humility, pretty much begged Iran to give it back.
I can't blame them.
It's unbelievable that they actually acknowledged that it was real, acknowledged that it was taken, and said, would you please give it back?
They're expensive.
So I want people to stop and think about that and realize that's probably the most traceable of these events so far, where you can read all about it on the internet and see something that actually happened in which a very classified piece of technology was downed for reasons that shouldn't ever have been able to happen. And what I'm hearing is from the insiders that there are cruise missiles that won't fire. There are bunker buster bombs that won't go off. There are tanks that won't start. And it goes on and on and on. It's unbelievable, the scope of what's happening. And that leads me to believe that we are actually dealing with a joint operation in which the boys from Topside, as some like to call them, are making darn sure that this plan that you're talking about right now will succeed. Because
I heard a description that sort of I thought was pretty funny, but does fit. As I understand it, these guys were described as tree-hugging hippies from space that had a primary directive of non-interference. And what are you doing zapping me into Gaga land? That's a quote from somebody on a security thing. If somebody wants to know about us and as much as can be and wants to hear recordings, freedomreigns.us. That's all I got to say.
Terrific. Drake, I thank you, and I encourage everyone, in this case, let's not worry about copyright. Let's distribute this. You can repost it. You can put it on the internet and put it under your own name, break it up into 1,000 different 10-minute sections, whatever you want to do. We need to get the word out. Nobody's trying to profit off of this. So just spread the word. We're going to get the transcript done as soon as we can and let people know, because this is going to be the most significant event in history when it happens. And your role, you listening to this, is going to be to help calm people down, get them educated so that they're not going to freak out, and that this can happen in as orderly a fashion as possible.
Well, David, I appreciate you having me on. I really do.
Thank you, Drake. It's been my pleasure. And to everyone out there, God bless you, and keep up the good work. Thanks so much.